And this is a continuation of the lecture that I just gave on Anand Carlsen games as we approach the World Championship match in just a couple weeks in Chennai, India. People are really excited about it. How many people think that Anand is going to prevail and retain his World Championship title? Couple guys and one person loudly coughing. I guess that's a no. And how many people think it's going to be a draw? The match can't be a draw. That's the whole point of a match, that it can't be drawn. And how many people think that Magnus Carlsen is going to win that match? All right. And we're also getting the vote of Grandmaster Ben Feingold here in the audience. St. Louis local, who also does a rotation for the Grandmasters in residence, and definitely want to check out all the various videos on YouTube of the GMs here that come into the wonderful chess club. So, as I mentioned before, we had Carlsen at the chess club here in the US for the first time in a major tournament, playing in the Sinkfield Cup. So he gained a lot of new fans, but we still have some Anand fans in the audience as well. Obviously, Anand is just a great guy. In addition to being a world champion, he also just seems like a really classy guy and has revolutionized the sport in India. He's supposedly as popular as a major sports star would be in the US in his India. And we would love to see that happen for chess in America. Anyway, this is one of his wins against Magnus Carlsen. Again, we look at the date 05. Magnus Carlsen at the pitiful rating of 2548. He doesn't even look at games like guys of that rating anymore. Of course, I'm kidding. Still a very impressive rating, but Magnus at the time was only 14 years old, right? So there you go. It's important to kind of keep that in perspective when you're looking at Carlsen games. When we had the Sinkfield Cup in the commentary booth, we were often talking about how Carlsen had a negative record against this guy and a negative record against that guy. And then you look in the database and all the games from when he's 12. It's like, okay, it makes sense, you know, that he wasn't able to have a positive record against some people. So, although, despite that, I don't think he has a negative record against very many people at all. In this game, Anand, playing white, decided that he needed to do something a little bit drastic in order to get his advantage rolling. He's up a pawn, of course, but these double pawns not that easy to utilize. King D2, the drastic move. Revolutionizing the position. I'm kidding. King D2 is a very solid move at centralizing your king, but here Anand decided to really try to transform one advantage into another advantage. He did play D5, yes. Yeah, which at first glance looks like maybe not the first thing you would consider, because if knight takes d5, you play bishop takes b5, and you are giving up the bishop versus knight, but then you're activating your rook and making it easier to infiltrate into your opponent's position. So instead, Magnus actually took with the pawn in this position. And now after rook to e5, what do you think white did here? Yes, he continued with c4. Again, all these typical tactics that we learn when we're first starting the game, pin, back rank mate, they're all in the variations of games by every player. Doesn't matter how strong they are, we're all using the same types of tactics. It's just that they see more of them and they see them a lot earlier, but they still come up. So c4 in this position, with the idea that the trade is of course impossible because rook d8, mating, or winning material rather. Not mating, but winning material in the back rank. So instead, black played king to f8. He could also take on h5, which would be pretty similar to the game continuation. And now white gets to create this nice pass pawn. Now what do you think white does here? Just simple chess. Just b4, protecting the pawn. a3, bolstering it. Knight d5, rook d4. And the reason I'm showing you this is just to get warmed up with like a little simple one. And now how does white finish off the game? Yes, just rook takes knight. Nice. So this is the end of the game. Because after rook takes d5, c7, and this pawn conveniently protects this d8 square, which is a nice little tactic that we see from time to time when we're dealing with fast pawns. Now speaking of move order, how about if white switched up the move order and tried to play c7 first? What do you think about that? Because last time we talked a lot about how, last class, for those of you who weren't there, we talked about move order and how critical it is to tactical knowledge. And so one thing that really helps to go to a teacher to talk about certain concepts with calculating, even though the main way to get better at tactics is just to do a lot of them. Move order is something you're going to want to look at a lot. So after knight takes c7, not as good, because after rook d7 check with the idea of winning a piece, yeah, the king can move to king e6 or king f6. Probably f. I guess it doesn't matter that much. But and now after rook takes, this is still hanging, right? So the move order makes a world of difference in that case. Okay, this is a great game that I want to show the full game of, actually. So we can be fair. Last time we looked at the game I showed you. Oh, that was also Anand is white. Yeah, that was also Anand is white. The dragon where Anand won beautifully. But that's okay. The last game or fragment that I'll show you is the one in which Carlsen actually beat Anand in the last time that they played. So that's the freshest thing in the memory of the two battling, which of course is a good thing for Magnus Carlsen. So Ruy Lopez, a favorite opening of both players. Do you think we're going to see a lot of Ruy Lopez's in this match coming up in November, Ben? Alex? Think we're going to see a lot of Ruys? I know you're openings expert. So yeah, both players just love playing the Ruy Lopez, so we'll probably get to see a lot of them. I mean, I think it's a great opening for spectators because it's usually really rich. This is the Chicoran defense, which is one of the main defenses to bring the knight over to a5 and play for c5. I'm just kind of going over the opening quickly. So white actually got like a really nice little advantage in this game. He played on the c file, threatening really to infiltrate here. So Magnus played the kind of unfortunate looking move a8. Remember, Magnus much lower rated than he is now. For some reason I don't have ratings in this game. That's weird. But 07 he was probably like just only like 2,700 or something. Well, he was a lower rated player in the game is what I'm trying to say. So Magnus playing the unpleasant looking knight to a8. But in a close position it's usually not the end of the world. So Anand playing queen d2. Now it looks like Magnus Carlsen is trying to trade some pieces off. So now what do you think Anand did here? So I'm showing you this game and it probably didn't go like trade, draw. Like rook takes c8, queen takes c8, queen c2, takes, and draw. Probably wouldn't be the game that I would show you. But Anand played like a really interesting move in this position. Rook c6 is funny. I knew somebody was going to suggest that. That's not what he played. Well, rook c6, yeah, I mean, I see you're just trying to hammer on f7, but let's take a look at the actual analysis. So, okay, we're not forced to take, first of all. Like, you have no threat, right? So we could start by playing h6 for one thing. That's one possibility. Like if we play h6 first and then take on c6, I'm not sure you have like such a major attack, although h6 is hanging in the end. Another thing is, well, what if I do just take and play like rook c7 or something? I guess you probably want to try like something like queen d5. But even that, after I can actually, or you wanted to take on d6. Taking on d6 is probably a lot better, yeah. Yeah, it's a lot better. So I actually don't want to play rook c7. Yeah, I like my h6 move better. And then you go back to f3. And now I can actually choose. You know, I don't have to take this right away. I could just play.
Wait.
You want to sacrifice an f7?
I'm looking at it.
You could. Yeah.
I'm getting a lot of pawns, like knight takes f7, king takes.
Yeah, I guess it's definitely worth looking at. Knight f7, king f7, and queen h6. But then it kind of begs the question, if you're going for this sacrifice, like what exactly is your rook doing here? So you want to just defend with rook h8? Yeah, I mean, that looks like a good idea. So, and if you go back, so say knight f7 doesn't work. If you just have to go back, oops. If you just have to go back after h6, knight f3, then, yeah, then I can just choose, I'd probably just take here and play king g7 now, right? And it doesn't look like you have much of nearly enough of attack, right? So yeah, probably h6 just as good. So what else can white do here? I'll give you a hint that this is not a spectacular move. This move reminds me more of king b2.
I was looking at
Rook e? Rook e1 is not as aggressive as the move that Anand played, although it's like the same spirit. No, he doesn't really want to trade everything off, because if he's trying to attack, he's going to need more pieces on the board. Like, just like when you were trying to play knight f7 and queen h6, the problem was you only had one other piece, and... What's that? Yeah, rook f1 is the correct move that Anand played. Well, it's what Anand played, and I think it's very inspired, because it follows a principle of not trading when you think that you have an edge. And if you also think about some of those variations where you're trying to sacrifice an f7 and they weren't quite bringing it home, if we get f4 in and we have a rook also participating in the action, it's going to be a lot stronger. Well, I don't know about that, because rook e1, I'm not sure where the rook is attacking.
I'm going to play the same thing. I'm going to play rook e3.
Oh, no, but he's not trying to do a rover. He's just trying to directly attack f7. So rook f1 is a lot faster, because we just want to play f4, and then after takes on e5, f7 is going to be under attack. Whereas rook e1, it's not as clear where the rook would be participating. It would take more moves to get it into the action. So rook f1, a really classy move, like just not the kind of move you would think of. It's the kind of the quintessential quiet move, right?
Yeah, good defense.
So h6 occurred, and then what do you think white did here? Not quite. He didn't take on he didn't take on s7.
Pretty good.
He didn't take on s7, but he did do something fun. What's that? He did play knight e6, yeah. So I didn't want to make it too easy. Like, he didn't sacrifice on f7. And now this is just this is such a great combination, because you're mixing the quiet with the violent, right? You're starting with this move rook f1 and then you're just like bang. And that kind of move isn't working when you're trading off pieces, right? So let's take a look and see what happens if takes. You play like say e7 check. The big problem here is that h6 is also hanging and that's giving white just so much play, right? With this knight not participating in the action, we already have 2 pawns and we're getting another one. Yeah, it's looking very dangerous. What might you play here for white? Rook c1, and then after, so now, what's that? We can definitely play queen d6 at some point. Now, but what would you do now as white? Rook takes c7, and then after queen takes c7, and then you just have a bunch of pawns, yeah.
The right move is queen h5.
Wow.
Or just rook to c5, c3 is also good, and it's gonna be mating. So multiple wins here. What's that?
After e7 check, when black just play king to d7.
Okay, let's look. So here, if e7,
King g7.
what can white do there? White's got a pretty good move here. Yeah, queen d5 is really brutal. Threatening queen g8.
Black has good defense of his king.
That's what
But we do need this rook actually, because we need to be able to play f4 at some point. Like if it wasn't for that, like the position wouldn't be that clear, right? Because maybe king f6 would be adequate at some point, right? Yeah, this is just brutal. So for instance, if knight b6 here, queen g8, just king f6. Now, wow. Maybe we don't need the rook in this situation. We just have queen to f8 and king g5, and this is where you generally like stop analyzing and trust that there's going to be a mate. Yeah, f4 is mating by force, right? And now just queen g4 is mate. Although I really would rather mate with a pawn somehow, but yeah, that would be more fun, but it still wouldn't be mate. We'd still have to play queen g4 for mate. Although of course there is one prettier mate in this position. I can't believe I played queen g4 mate when I could play. I know I'm such a fish. Bishop d1 mate is obviously much stronger. So normally when you get the king to g5, it is important to keep analyzing, but usually you have faith that there's something there. It would really be unreasonable if there wasn't. So king g7, queen d5 looks crushing. So instead, after knight to e6, black actually didn't take on e6. He played king to h7 instead. And now this allowed Anand to play. Well, just our idea with playing rook f1. Just bringing the other piece into the attack. I mean, this is just basic attacking principle that you want to bring more pieces into the game. It's just that he executed it in a very pretty way, which is counterintuitive. A lot of times players will just start trading off on files, especially in rapid games, especially at the amateur level. So seeing him bring his rook from c1 to f1, I think is pretty impressive. And it's just a very difficult position, obviously, for black. And so I'm gonna, yeah?
Instead of h6, can black defend with like maybe 6 or
You mean in this position after rook f1, just don't play h6 at all?
yeah, maybe queen c7.
You mean just play like try to play queen? Oh, queen b6 trying to stop f4. I think would be met by moving the king and then playing f4 anyway, and you still have a really nice attack. Are you going to try to play queen d4 at some moment or something?
Yeah.
So if, for instance, I were to play king h2, you're going to play queen d4 to try to trade queens. Yeah, that's definitely a better idea. I mean, it's a good idea. I don't know if it's better or worse. Yeah, the d pawn's definitely weak. I mean, maybe we can just go for this, and you can't defend it. But Alex's idea also is interesting because it's kind of a similar idea, but he wants to play queen c7 with the idea of playing queen c3 instead, hoping that that will offer more opportunities. I think the problem though is similar idea, like we just play f4, and if you play queen c3, we're also going to win a pawn, right? So you're not quite getting this infiltration and in time not to lose material. So yeah, it just looks kind of lost.
Somebody should teach Magnus not to play knight a8.
He was only 16. Give him a break. So rook f1, but these are excellent questions, and definitely very hard to play against Anand. I think Ben's friends with Anand, right? But have you ever played with him in a tournament game? He's hard to play against.
Yeah, we had a crazy draw. Like.
So yeah, this position is just looking really brutal. So can kind of move on to the next game in a minute. But I'll show you how it ended. Yeah.
I saw you teach him how to resign too. Sam Savvy-esque over there.
Yeah, but that's definitely a really impressive and instructive game. I'm surprised at how instructive these games are. Okay, so this one is Anand's move. What did he play here? It's from the London Chess Classic, one of the great tournaments on the calendar in December in London. And usually our own Nakamura plays in that as well. In fact, I think he's played in every one from the beginning.
I'm going there this year. They made it a rapid. It's a 16-player like knockout rapid instead of the usual format. So yeah, Nakamura is playing, and Kramnik and maybe Carlsen.
And there's like a satellite. Yeah. So what's the best move in this position? What did Anand play here? Obviously he's got to, you remember the game? Or you see it? Yeah. But I figured you might remember the game as well because it's only from a couple years ago. Not that you wouldn't figure it out immediately anyway. Yeah, knight h6 is a really good move because if you just take on d7 immediately, b2's hanging at the end and that's not much. So instead, Anand just played knight to h6 check, which forces, can't play king h8 because of knight f7, so it forces g takes h6, and now white plays, and now queen g4, and we get to play rook takes d7 with tempo. And now after bishop to a3, I'm sorry, I wanted to have you guys check that move. Black played queen to g8, and now we get to capture the pawn on a6. And actually, it took Anand a really long time to win this, and Magnus put up a tremendous fight because even though the position is just beautiful for y8, there's not really that much. It's very simplified, right? And the way he won it was eventually by piling up on the f6 pawn. If you actually skip towards the position, no, that's not right. Yeah, the position where things really fell apart, it was. So for 30 moves, Magnus was like trying to set up a fortress and, keep everything protected. And then at this point, after rook to c6, with the 3 pieces all on the weak f6 pawn, this is when Magnus really collapsed. And this was an interesting moment because both of them were rated almost exactly the same at this moment. Since then, Magnus Carlsen has surpassed Anand in terms of rating, although he is 2 points lower at this time, yeah. But in the last couple of years, Magnus has been #1 in the world. And Anand, what number is Anand right now? 4? 9? Yeah. Wow. Yeah, and this is so here we have 2864 for Magnus. That's more like it. So yeah, this was actually the last game that the two played together, which certainly does not leave a good taste in Anand's mouth because he lost the game. Spoiler. This is on the Tau Memorial. in Moscow, which Hikaru also played in.
I was there.
You were there?
I was there.
Were you watching the games live?
Yeah.
Was it fun?
Yeah.
What was there like a great area for spectators as well, or was it just more?
There was an area where they had commentators and you could play against other people and you could watch the games on all screens.
The commentary was in Russian, obviously.
Yeah, he speaks
But you speak just as fluently in Russian as in English, but you can hear it, you can listen.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Was it difficult for you to follow the chess analysis in the language? No.
Not at this level. Understand, it's very.
Even if you haven't been doing it as much, it just you kind of just like fall right back into it. Yeah. All right, so this is white's move.
E5 seems pretty good.
Where?
E5 seems good, but yeah, 95.
Oh, actually, I do want to kind of look back in the position just for a second. At this moment, so this is kind of interesting because at this moment, black played bishop to c8 to try to put his bishop on a stronger square. f5, b7 is just kind of hanging out passively. So Carlsen later said that the move bishop was positionally sound, but just doesn't work. After queen a4, so he really saw almost all of the critical variations at this point. It's really rather forcing if you're going to follow up logically with bishop c8. So after rook to c7, f3, which is, you know, a typical idea in this type of position to try to play e4. Now after bishop e6, e4 did occur. Now after takes on e4, so now e5 is a dangerous idea. So because of that, Anand took and now played queen to d7. And the idea here is it does make the move e5 less powerful because we can post up on d5. So that's a reason actually that Anand captured all those pawns on e4. Because if we play e5 here and you can't play knight d5, then it's very strong. But now it's less powerful.
Like 93.
No. I'll give you a hint that we have seen this move earlier. In this presentation. Not sure how much of a hint that is. Now people are going to guess rook to f1. It was a rook f1. What a beautiful move here.
And what's that rook there? Crazy.
Not knight takes bishop. Who suggested d5? And what's your idea?
I just like the move.
Okay, so after c takes d5.
Well, my queen's hanging, so I'm going to take care of that.
Okay.
Do it.
So actually d5 was played in the game. And now after c takes d5, queen takes d7. Anand in this position was planning to take with the rook, yeah, because the rook is hanging. And then what do you think Carlsen's all there? So try to just see it. Actually, let's see it from this. Try to calculate it from this position. Because Magnus thought that Anand just made a simple miscalculation in that variation. So try to figure out what it was that Magnus missed. I mean, sorry, that Anand missed. What did he miss? Why is it so good for white after takes on d5, queen d7, rook d7? What's so?
You are on a8 hanging, if you can get your bishop to attack somehow.
Well, yeah, sure. That would be good.
I mean, I can see the way to.
You can't see, but you feel like there's something going on there with the bishop, yeah. Well, try to make something work that's forcing, because there is a forcing line here that Magnus used to good effect. In fact, this was a bit of an embarrassing defeat for Anand, because he lost I think he resigned not too many moves after this. You know, always looking at all the captures and forcing moves is really important, whether you're just starting out or you're becoming advanced players, or whether you're the very best players in the world. Obviously, very rare for players at that level to miss like more simpler tactical variations, but it certainly happens. That's what makes watching these matches really interesting, that usually you'll see pretty flawless tactical chess, but there can be some kind of lightning bolt at some point in the match where somebody just completely misses something, which doesn't happen with computers. So any ideas here for white after takes on d5, queen takes d7, rook takes d7? I'll put that on the board. Ben has an idea. So you're talking about something on that diagonal, yes. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. I think that's like what a lot of people would be looking at in this position, like sort of tactics, trying to take advantage of the back rank and the pins. Like trying to make something like takes in d5 work, knight takes d5, knight takes d5, bishop d5, rook d1, but
Play knight takes bishop and not bishop h3.
it doesn't quite work because we can just play rook to d8, and then after bishop d. What's that? Go ahead. What were you saying?
I said play knight takes bishop.
So instead of playing takes on d5 here, you just want to play.
Knight takes bishop.
So knight takes bishop, and then after f takes e6,
Bishop h3.
and then say we play something like rook to e7. So you just want to play knight a6, f takes e6, bishop h3, and then if rook e7.
I guess I'll take your pawn with check.
But you haven't
I
taken
already take- I already-
you haven't taken on d5 yet.
yeah.
Well, yeah, just take on d5, exactly. So you were exactly right. So knight takes e6 is the brilliant move that was missed by Anand much earlier in the variation. I'm sure like once this started to happen, he realized, but it was too late. So, and it's very counterintuitive because you see the bishop being so strong in this diagonal, right? And I think that's why it's kind of hard to see, because you're looking for things like takes on d5, and then after knight takes d5, knight d5, bishop d5, something like rook to d1 looks pretty promising at first glance, right? Right? Because now, if we were to play rook d8, bishop d5, rook d5, rook d5, rook d5, it's mating, right? So we after e takes d5, knight d5, bishop d5, rook d1, What do we do here? Thought we had something like with maybe we have to try taking with the bishop here. So that after rook to d1, still looks good. Huh. What did I miss here? Maybe after takes on d5, we just play. And g5 just looks horrible after takes on e6, right? Yeah, we can play bishop f5. Maybe this is, it's probably a little bit hard, probably a little bit more difficult for white than the game.
Why can't you take the pawn? Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. What am I missing? Do you think it's just that this variation's a little harder for white? I mean, it's still clearly good for white, but there's no win.
The other way just wins.
Yeah, just wins immediately, where this is just an advantage for white. Because I mean, it doesn't really lead to anything clear. You know, after d6, we can just move the rook, and now actually the pawn's in danger. So instead, it's just like some kind of advantage for white. Whereas after knight takes e6, pawn takes h6, bishop h3, everything's really falling apart here. If any rook comes to e7, if this one comes, then just takes on d5 is just the pin, and the attack on e6 is crushing. And if rook to e8, same thing, taking on d5 is just crushing because of all these attacks. So instead, Anand just played king to h8, but now Carlsen, instead of taking on e6, started with e5, and then after bishop takes e6, the problem is he's also going to lose d5. It's going to be impossible to defend everything. Rook c7, preventing knight to e7, and now this nice move, bishop to d7, blocking the future defense of d4 and pushing forward with e6, and it's just resigning now. So interestingly, actually, the material is still equal here, but of course, it's just totally crushing for white. I mean, I guess the only thing to attempt here would be something like knight to e7, right? But you can't even move the knight to such an aggressive square. I mean, you can only play knight to d5, but we could even play rook to b7 there, and it's just hard for you to move the knight anywhere. Even f6 is under attack. So a really impressive game from Carlsen, and pretty poor first performance for Anand. Hopefully the match will not go like that. Actually, I mean, I'm personally rooting for Carlsen because I think it's going to be really good for chess if he wins, but I hope the match will be very interesting as well. Anyway, I hope that you guys enjoyed this kind of review of the Anand Carlsen games and kind of tried to pick out some of the most interesting battles. It interests me that in both that game I showed you where Anand had that better endgame and he played d5 and then took on b5 and started ushering the c-pawn forward, that a key move was d5. And then also in this game, the key move was d5, breaking open all the lines and allowing white to play queen takes d7 and find this nice knight takes e6 move, which just won immediately. So in both cases, the key move being d5. And also lots of interesting tactics in their games.